Hello, all you freedom-loving people. Welcome to another episode of Front Page. I'm your host, Scott Cameron Goulet. The New York State Supreme Court ruled that New York City's vaccine mandate was illegal. This is not the first decision of its kind, but the judge's ruling is bold and unique. The U.S. has intensively prosecuted more than a dozen Chinese spies while arresting Americans who are helping the Chinese Communist Party train Chinese military pilots. The United Kingdom and Australia have also warned their nationals that helping the Chinese Communist military with training can be prosecuted as a danger to national security. The UK has a new Prime Minister, but the country's economic problems won't go away with the departure of Liz Truss, so will Sunak have a brilliant solution to the economic woes. NASA has released a set of stunning photos of the pillars of creation. New celestial objects are being born right before our eyes. Okay, let's get into it. The New York State Supreme Court has ruled that New York City's COVID-19 vaccine mandate against municipal workers is illegal and that employees who were fired for refusing the vaccine must be reinstated immediately with back pay. The plaintiffs in the case are 16 former sanitation department workers who were fired for refusing the vaccine. More than 1,750 city workers in New York have been fired for refusing vaccinations, including 35 police officers and more than 950 Department of Education employees. In his ruling, Judge Ralph Porzio wrote, "Being vaccinated does not prevent an individual from contracting or transmitting COVID-19. Porzio said in his 13-page ruling that then City Health Commissioner Dave Chokshie's October 20th, 2021 order violates the separation of powers doctrine that is enshrined in the state constitution. Chokshi also didn't have the power and authority to permanently exclude them from their workplace. Judge Porzio also stated that Chokshie's order violated the state constitution. He wrote, "The vaccine mandate for city employees is not just about safety and public health, it's about compliance." And New York City Mayor Eric Adams on March 24th issued another executive order exempting athletes and performing artists from the vaccine mandate, but he has not exempted from the vaccine mandate any government workers. The judge called the executive orders arbitrary and capricious. James McCarthy, the president-lieutenant of the New York Fire Department's Uniform Fire Officers Association, condemned Mayor Adams earlier this year after the mayor allowed the exception to the vaccine mandate for athletes and performers. Meanwhile, firefighters were still being fired over their status of being unvaccinated. McCarthy said, "We're here to say that we support the revocation of the vaccine mandate. We think that the people that work for New York City should also have the mandate relocated for them." Judge Porzio said, "We shouldn't be penalizing the people who showed up to work at great risk to themselves and their families while we were locked down." According to this ruling, the fired sanitation workers had until 6 a.m. on Tuesday to return to their official work statuses. However, this ruling applies only to the plaintiffs in this case. But their attorney, Chad LaVeglia, said every city employee who was fired because of the mandate can bring a civil suit against the city. And of course, the New York City Law Department said that it has filed papers seeking to overturn Porzio's decision. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Christopher Wray held a joint press conference on Monday to publicize 3 judicial cases that indicted 13 people related to espionage activity on behalf of China.
The Justice Department will not tolerate attempts by any foreign power to undermine the rule of law upon which our democracy is based. We will continue to fiercely protect the rights guaranteed to everyone in our country, and we will defend the integrity of our institutions.
The 3 cases involve the Chinese Communist Party's infiltration into the United States, their interference with justice, and their attempts to punish and deport dissidents in the United States. In the first case, the Justice Department indicted 7 CCP officials, 2 of whom were arrested in New York last Thursday and 5 whom remain at large. The 7 were engaged in Operation Fox Hunt in the United States in order to harass, to intimidate, and to monitor a Chinese dissident who was living in the United States in an attempt to deport him back to China. In the second case, two CCP intelligence officials, who are Guo Chunhe and Zheng Wang, are accused of trying to obstruct a judicial investigation in New York of a multinational telecommunication company. The company is widely speculated to be Huawei, although the Justice Department did not name the company. Two CCP intelligence officers tried to recruit a U.S. double agent to undermine the prosecution of the telecommunication thought to be Huawei. But in fact, the man that they recruited was actually a double agent who was working on behalf of the FBI. When the Chinese telecom company was initially charged in 2019, He and Wang conspired to bribe a law enforcement officer. The two Chinese agents offered to pay $61,000 in Bitcoin, according to the indictment. Last month, He and Wang also allegedly gave the employee $14,000 plus $600 worth of jewelry in an attempt to obtain sensitive information. The two men still remain at large. The third case is in the District of New Jersey, which charges 4 Chinese nationals, including 3 intelligence officers of the Communist Party's Ministry of State Security, for using the so-called International Institute as a cover for a long-running campaign to recruit new agents for the communist government. FBI Director Christopher Wray told reporters, each of these cases lays bare the Chinese government's flagrant violation of international law as they work to project their authoritarian view around the world, including within our own borders. A former U.S. Army pilot and flight instructor who worked in China has been arrested in Australia and will be extradited to the United States. According to court records, Daniel Edmund Duggan was arrested last Friday, October 21st, in New South Wales. Australian police arrested him at the request of the United States, and they are about to initiate formal extradition proceedings. Details of the U.S. arrest warrant and charges have not been released to the public. Duggan served in the U.S. Army and has more than 12 years of experience flying jet fighters. Also, Duggan flew AV-8B Harrier attack aircraft in the U.S. Marine Corps and has made hundreds of carrier landings on 7 different aircraft carriers. In addition, he was an air combat instructor. After meeting and marrying his wife in Sydney, he began settling in Australia, and he started a company called Top Gun Tasmania, which employed former Air Force pilots. They offered flying adventures for tourists aboard jet fighters. He hired these pilots from the German, Australian, and British Air Forces. Reuters reported that Duggan was arrested because he had started to work in China. Duggan moved to Beijing in 2014 and sold Top Gun Tasmania shortly thereafter. Duggan's LinkedIn profile says that he had been working in Qingdao, China since 2017 as the managing director of an integrated aviation consulting firm. In the same week that Duggan was arrested, the British Ministry of Defense confirmed that about 30 retired British fighter pilots were training Communist Chinese Air Force personnel at a flight school in South Africa to help the Communist forces understand the tactics of Western fighters and pilots and how to shoot down Western fighters. Britain has warned these pilots that they must stop working for China or they will be prosecuted under a new law on national security grounds. Australia is also investigating reports that some of its former fighter pilots were recruited to work in China. On Tuesday, October 25th, Rishi Sunak went to Buckingham Palace to see King Charles III, who authorized the formation of his cabinet. Sunak was then officially inaugurated as Prime Minister. Sunak, who is a descendant of Indian immigrants, is the first Asian Prime Minister in British history, and he is the youngest in the last 200 years. This was a sure result after rivals Boris Johnson and Penny Mordaunt dropped out of the race. Mordaunt announced her withdrawal at the last minute after failing to win the support of 100 Conservative Party lawmakers, which is a prerequisite for running for Prime Minister. And Boris Johnson's decision to withdraw from the race was made on Sunday. In a statement, he said that he could confirm that a high benchmark of 102 nominations had been passed, but unless there is a united party in Parliament, there can be no effective governance. So he decided to not return to Downing Street at this time. With 3 prime ministers rotating in less than 2 months, the 42-year-old Sunak's top priority will be to calm Britain's political and economic turmoil. And Sunak is expected to cut spending hard in an attempt to rebuild Britain's financial credibility. Sunak belongs to the second generation of immigrants born in Britain. His father was a family doctor and his mother was a pharmacist. After graduating from Oxford University, he went to Stanford University. Sunak became the youngest ever Secretary of the Treasury in the Johnson administration at the age of 39. To combat the economic downturn caused by the pandemic, Sunak offered a series of economic stimulus and lyrical programs that enabled Britain to maintain the lowest unemployment rate in recent decades, thus increasing his political popularity. The challenges before Sunak include Britain's worst economic woes in decades and a deeply divided Conservative Party. There are serious conflicts within the Conservative Party over key issues such as Brexit, immigration, and economic management. For example, some Conservative MPs are strongly opposed to tax increases, while others will oppose spending cuts in key areas such as health and defense. Sunak will also face the need to deliver on promises to control immigration, as well as the Northern Ireland issue in the Brexit negotiations. While Rishi Sunak has become the new Prime Minister, the crisis of the pound will not end with the resignation of Liz Truss. Britain's inflation rate has recently climbed to 10.1%. Everything is more expensive, so the economic problems facing Britain are far from over. The tax cut plan that was proposed by Liz Truss at the end of September has only exacerbated the crisis in the pound and has triggered turmoil in the British financial markets. The exchange rate of the British pound to the US dollar fell to 1.035 on September 26, which is a new low since 1971. Mike Sun, a North American investment strategist, said that Truss's tax cuts were just a trigger and that the pound's problems had been there for a long time. He highlighted the risk of a collapse and the liquidation of the UK's national pensions, and that selling off of the pensions could trigger a real estate crash. To see the current problems that are facing UK pensions, one needs to understand the basic background knowledge. Mike Sun said, in the 1980s and 1990s, interest rates in the UK were high, so pension returns were relatively high and stable for quite a long time. After 2000, Treasury yields and bank interest rates were falling. After the 2008 global financial crisis, interest rates on bank deposits were almost zero, so the return on pensions was falling sharply. Now, at the same time, the baby boom that emerged after World War II ended. The birth rate of the British population is declining and the society is aging more and more. So pension yields declined and there are more baby boomers who are retiring. The post-war baby boomers are now of pensionable age, so there is a gap between the pension investment from new workers and the expenditure paid out for the baby boomers taking their pensions. The pension fund managers used the funds as margin to invest in financial derivatives such as long-term treasury bonds. The financial derivatives leverage the income in order to pay for the pensions that are to be paid out. Truss's tax cut is not wrong. It's just the wrong time for such tax cuts because of the pension funds that have to be paid out. With the U.S. Fed's recent strong interest rate hikes, the investments behind the UK pensions have depreciated. It turns out that investors' money that is invested in UK capital markets, including the stocks and bond markets, is flowing to the U.S. where the Fed has been hiking interest rates. Truss's tax cuts led to a sharp rise in interest rates on UK treasuries, but a drop in treasury coupon prices or value. So pension fund managers were forced to sell treasuries in order to cover the margin. The selling of these treasuries has exacerbated the rise in treasury rates, creating a vicious cycle. Interest rates go up and value goes down. Mike Sun believes that with a new prime minister coming up, this problem still exists because the real problem is the structural problem of the pound. That means it's a problem that cannot be effectively solved in the short term. How can the UK get out of its current predicament? There's no simple solution. It also has to do with whether or not the Fed will keep raising interest rates. Sun thinks that it would give investors a little confidence if Treasury yields were raised to a maximum of 4% or 4.25% and then stopped. However, back in the 1980s, the Fed had raised the Treasury rate to nearly 20% with rates on federal deposits in the high teens. Sun said, the fear for everyone is here too because there's a lot of room for imagination. And as long as the Fed continues to raise rates, it's going to get worse and worse for the pound. If something goes wrong with the pound, it's not just a problem for the UK, but the impact on Europe and the whole world, including the US, will be huge, he added. He estimated that the new Prime Minister is likely to visit the United States and talk to the Federal Reserve about not raising interest rates. Nearly 3/4 of European consumers are cutting back on their daily spending in order to cope with a worsening crisis in which the cost of living is soaring, according to a new survey. The survey shows that 71% of consumers in 6 major European markets have made significant changes in the way that they shop. 58% of consumers revealed that they have cut back on essential purchases, and 35% have started using personal savings and loans to pay their bills. The shutdown of energy supplies in Russia is forcing households and industry to prepare for possible power outages this winter. Consumer confidence in continental Europe remains at near record lows. There is growing concern that the Eurozone may be heading into recession. These concerns are forcing European consumers to adopt a series of coping behaviors that have not been seen since the austerity of the 1970s and the 1980s. This includes eating one less meal a day, switching to discount grocery chains, buying private label products at lower prices, and buying reduced prices and expired goods, etc. In this survey, more than half of Europeans said that they plan to order fewer meals by phone from restaurants, and 47% said that they would eat out less at restaurants, bars, and cafes. Supermarket chains have also become narrower in terms of the range of products that they can offer at the low and mid-range. NASA last week released the latest images of the Webb Space Telescope, capturing one of the most stunning views in the universe, the Pillars of Creation. The Pillars of Creation are located about 6,500 light years from Earth in a region of the Eagle Nebula in the Serpens constellation. The Pillars of Creation are 3 giant columns of interstellar gas and dust filled with young stars in the process of formation. It is within these mysterious columns of cosmic dust and gas that new stars are brewing, hence the name Pillars of Creation. The Webb's near-infrared camera is more sophisticated than the Hubble Space Telescope. It captures wavelengths of near-infrared light that are invisible to the human eye in order to observe the beautiful process of newborn star birth. The new image of the Pillars of Creation show a large number of previously unobservable stars. It also shows the observation of interstellar gas, dust, and other objects that are more detailed. The Webb telescope, which began service earlier this year, is the most powerful space telescope ever built. It has returned a wealth of new data that has never been seen before. One of the main goals of the $10 billion Webb Space Telescope is to study the life cycle of stars, while another major research focus is on exoplanets, that is, planets beyond our solar system. Okay, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for watching Front Page International. If you like what you saw today, please don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth. Again, thank you for watching Front Page, and we will see you next time.